my mom and several of my family members were having dreams that I died in a car accident. And instead of the road going straight, it had a huge curve that went around like this. And I went straight. At this point, I was like, God, if you exist, if you care about me, and this was your way of waking me up, I said, I give up. I've always, even when I was young, always made a choice. Happiness and joy and the frequencies that you vibe in. When I would get dark, it was when I would write music and express those dark feelings and emotions because I was not comfortable sharing those with anyone else. I never wanted to make other people feel the way that I did. So when I would express my feelings, it would be on paper.
Do you regret that time? Because it's hard for me to imagine you being the person you are today if you didn't go through that.
Not even a little bit, because I feel like I didn't just grow from that. My entire family grew from it. I think that a lot of the music I write now is a reflection of who I've become.
Artists nowadays take on multiple roles in the music industry, and as an outsider looking in, listeners who aren't connected to the music industry could think that this is the standard practice for all artists to sing, write, and make their own music. Gabrielle, what part connects to you the most deeply and why?
I have to say it's got to be the songwriting. I think that creating music is all about telling a story, and when you're writing songs specifically to your own situation or whatever, it feels more personal and like you can connect with people on a different level. So I just love the songwriting side of things.
Do you remember the first time you wrote your own song?
I do, and it's really embarrassing because
Embarrassing. Okay.
It's so embarrassing.
I'm ready.
Because my mom and dad, they're concerned for me because I was so emo as a kid. I was just very emotional. And my parents would come in there and I would be writing a song and they're like, "Are you okay?" And I would be like, "Yeah, I made it up." Obviously, it wasn't made up. Like, it was totally about, but the first song, full song I wrote, music, lyrics, everything, was called That Night, and it was about a dream I had of a current boyfriend dying in a car accident.
How old were you?
I was 13.
Okay.
Or 14. This was a full, I wrote so many songs before, or 14 or something. I was a little older, but still in 10th grade, I want to say. This was the first song that I played on piano and wrote. I wrote my first song not on piano at 9.
Okay.
But this one was the one that stuck out, and I named it That Night, and it was like, you died.
Oh my God.
And yeah, it was just traumatic. And my parents were like, I mean, it's a beautiful song, but are you okay?
Yeah.
And so, I mean, it was just a dream I had about him dying, and then I played it for him. Why would I do that?
Yeah.
By the way.
Yeah. Okay, can you help us with something? Because I have had the pleasure to really get to know the Mooney family, fortunately. But people don't understand why what you're saying is so kind of jarring to us. But I think it's because they don't know your family, your parents specifically. So can you kind of give us a big picture? Let's back up.
Yeah.
Let's talk about you growing up. Where'd you grow up? What were the things you were doing? Just talk about your siblings, your family, how many siblings you have, that type of thing. Where did you go to school? Give us the whole rundown. Church, your whole background.
Well, church was literally our life. We grew up on a farm, and we woke up at 5 a.m. and went milked cows, gathering chicken eggs and all of that stuff. Thought that was normal. I thought everybody, didn't y'all finish your chores?
Yeah.
What the poop?
Yeah.
And, but we were raised up in, my papa was a pastor.
Okay.
And, my mom and dad both got married at 18. They got married at 18, which is
Yeah.
Holy poop, I was a child at 18. And so growing up, we didn't have a lot. You know, just some weeks we would have just like pinto beans for the entire week and cornbread. And, you know, we were like, we just love pinto beans. Like, that was just the thing. But we had, it's called the Shay Mooney family.
Okay.
And they were a little traveling Southern gospel group. And we were named the Mooney family third generation.
Wait. So your whole family?
Whole family.
So, okay. Describe your whole family. Like, tell us about your siblings first. Like,
yes.
Give us the whole family dynamic.
So it starts out first. My papa and granny, my Aunt Debbie, my Uncle Todd, my Uncle Terry, my dad, and my mom all sang together with my granny and papa and would travel around to different churches. My papa played the dobro. Mom and Aunt Debbie played the piano. My dad plays the steel guitar and the bass.
Okay.
My Uncle Terry plays the drums. My Uncle Todd also plays the bass and some guitar. But we would go around to different churches and fall asleep in the front pew. We were like 2-3 years old. And then they would just like wake us up and bring us up on stage. And we would be like, this little light of mine, you know, like just.
Oh my God.
Oh, that's how we were raised, you know?
Yeah.
We weren't allowed to listen to anything but Christian music.
Okay.
You know, it was
into the age
music.
of what?
What is it?
Into the age of what? How old were you when you were first able to listen?
We weren't ever.
Okay.
Like, it was sneaking.
Okay.
We would listen to Kiss Her 93, you know, which was like,
oh my God.
And my cousins even let us listen to some Ace of Base in their car. You know, but I would go to the Bible bookstore. Mom would let us go to the Bible bookstore. And they had these headphones that you could listen to CDs and stuff, like preview it and stuff. Mm-hmm. And I was super into rock music. That was my thing. You know, I played harmonica, piano, and, you know, harmonized with Shay and Erica because we would sing. But I listened to like 12 Stones. And at the time, you listened to, I told Mom and Dad that Evanescence was actually Heavenescence, and they dropped the H.
Okay.
And they believed me.
Okay.
So there's ways to get around it. But me, Erica, and Shay, like we were homeschooled a lot of our time during our younger years.
Yes.
And so we became super close. We would compete in county fairs and go to like the church things and sing Mary Mary Shackles and you know, things like that. And but people listen to the way that we write and the way we sing. Most of that is actually influenced from Christian music. You know, we would listen to Kirk Franklin, Mary Mary. People would be like, I hear a little bit of urban in you. And it was like, well, because our idols were all, you know, Black, incredible, like runs all over the place.
Yes.
You know, gospel singers. And so when they listen to Shay, who's in Dan and Shay now, when they listen to Shay, like, oh, there's just like something gospel in his voice. I'm like, well, you can thank my mom for that. Because, you know, we listen to Kirk Franklin, like everybody that we would listen to were Christian.
That's so cool.
And so that's kind of where the influence of that comes from, because Lord knows it wasn't from the Southern gospel that we got all of the runs.
Yeah.
You know?
Did you rebel against that at your younger ages? Like you and your siblings, how rebellious were you because of the fact that you were kind of grown up in this conservative household? You weren't allowed to listen to music? Because I'm imagining, even though you're homeschooled, maybe, you know, you're talking to your friends and your friends are listening to secular music. Like you go outside, you're talking to the chickens, because I'm guessing those are your friends.
Right. 100%.
And then you're like, you wanted to listen to something else other than Kirk Franklin and whatever. So
100%.
How did y'all respond to that? How did you respond to that?
Well, I was the rebel. My sister, Erica, was very sneaky about being a rebel. Me, I got in way more trouble because I was honest about it. And so I started a band when I was 17, 18 years old. And when I went off to Fayetteville to college, I was playing in bars, and that was the line.
Oh.
You know, like my parents completely cut me off. We stopped talking for like 2 years.
Oh my God.
Yeah, it was a whole thing.
Okay. Well, wait, how old were you?
at this point, I was like 18.
Okay.
So 19 maybe. And it was very traumatic for my parents. But also with me, I was like, look, I love the Lord, all this different stuff. But I had a really big problem with the way the church moved and the way that they would keep all of their sins private.
Okay.
And act like they didn't do anything wrong. But anybody else that was kind of stepping out of what they thought was proper, it was like, you're a sinner, you're the worst, all this stuff. When I'm just like, I'm very honest about my struggles. I'm very honest about, what I'm doing. And what's so crazy is it brought together our family after, I came back around and was like, okay, we can meet in the middle here. I don't want the complete religious judgment. I want honesty.
Okay.
For
sure.
I want honesty about, why you think this is wrong. Show me the scripture on it, because I went to private school and we had Bible class. We did Hebrew and Greek word studies.
Yes.
So we went back to the word and I was like, show me, where this says, don't do this, And because I come to the conclusion that a lot of the things that were taught in the church were more so of their own interpretation of things, not actual biblical words.
Yes.
So we actually had a church split when I was 16. And that was kind of the thing that made me start questioning everything. And the pastor basically said, we need to weed out the people that we disagree with and weed out, like it says in the Bible, the sheaves and the wheat. And that's basically the rapture, right?
Yes.
He was saying that we were supposed to do that. Be like, oh, that's a bad apple. That's not our place. And so I went through a really tough struggle with all of that. But long story, a little shorter, I found that my relationship with God had everything to do with my parents' faith that I would find him.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And they prayed for me. They, we had our disagreements for sure. I know they were probably pleading the blood over my car every night.
Yes.
But when I came back to God, it was because I found him in the broken place. It wasn't in this, I'm in the church, I'm high off of this. It was, I need him and I need you. And he showed up. And so, with my whole background and stuff, I'm so blessed to have parents that, are so connected to the Lord, especially my mama. My dad, he sends us little Bible verses every morning.
He's such a sweet man. I've gotten to know him a little bit and he's a legend for sure.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
He's adorable.
Before we get too far, can you also tell me, I think it's important for people who maybe feeling certain ways. I'm imagining, and I almost feel like I can feel people triggering right now. Some of the things they're saying are like, oh my gosh, either I went through that, I can relate to that, or I'm going through that now. Can you describe the denomination you grew up in when you were going through that time? And then 2, what's the denomination you connect with now on a most deep level for you personally? Not that it has to, not that all this has to do with denominations, but I just want to give people, that's a question I feel like someone maybe has at this point.
I grew up Assemblies of God, and I still identify as spirit-filled because, we're the crazies. We're the ones that you started Jericho March, we go and be coming after you, But I describe myself as non-denominational now because I don't think that we should be separated out into denominations. I feel like, there ain't going to be denominations in heaven.
Yes.
You're going to all be, you have to follow God and his word and the Holy Spirit. And so, but growing up in that, there's still so many teachings, everything that were incredible. And the people that really brought me so much peace was actually my youth pastors, who are now the pastors of that same church. They were humble, and they didn't gossip. They didn't, make any kind of jokes about, people out of the church or anything like that. They just prayed for people and just loved on people. And when everything changed for me, it was when I went to Sweden. So me and Shay, this was a long story to get to this point, but me and Shay both, we moved to Pittsburgh and we went to a ministry program for 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
And who was this
wild.
with and through?
This was through a church in it's called Allison Park, Pennsylvania. And Allison Park Church, they had this 9-month ministry program, and God led me to this place because I did not want to go to Pittsburgh. I hate the cold.
Yeah, for sure.
I hate the cold is just the worst thing ever. And then they didn't have days off for snow there. Oh, okay. And I was like,
yeah,
you guys are just cold all the time. It flurries here. And we're everyone call school off. But God really worked on me in this whole, situation, because I was so skeptical. I was just okay, these people are fake, but we went to this, it's called Mission SOS in Sweden. And we went and we met with some of the students there that were kind of the affiliate for this other school. And just the way that they were was life-changing for me. I walked in, here I am, all these tattoos, and at the time I didn't have as many tattoos, but I wore a wallet chain. I was this little punk rock country girl.
Yeah.
And they just kind of walked in and me oh, you dress so cool, just loved on me. And there was no what's she doing? It was just pure God love. Mm-hmm. And they would walk up to absolutely anybody in the street and just hold their hand and go, God loves you so much. Do you know how loved you are? And it was so genuine.
Yes.
It wasn't this forced thing. Sorry. It was just radiating off of them.
Let me pause you for a second because you're so passionate about what you're saying right now. It sounds like you experienced the opposite quite a bit. And so you recognize what you did want look like when you got it. So can you describe why was that so important to you? What had you experienced in your past that made you feel so loved at this moment by these people?
Well, there is a moment where I was in the depths. My parents and I weren't talking. And I was I'm going to try to go back to church. I'm going to just go to a church service and just sit in the back and just, observe. And I walked in. Everyone just stared at me. Mm-hmm. They just kind of cut their eyes. It was just kind of I felt very out of place. I'd grown up in church my entire life. Very out of place. No love, really. It was everybody was dealing with their own issues and they had no room for other people's drama or, hurt. It was they were all so broken, but they were in the church. Mm. And so I think the big difference for me was these people did not bring their trauma to me. They did not bring their issues to me. They had worked on themselves so much that the only thing that could radiate out of them was God love. And I was that's what I want. Mm. That's what I want people to feel when they're around me.
That's awesome.
Is the God love, not the, things are really bad out there. It was who cares?
Yes. So it sounds like to me, what I'm picking up, or I feel like I'm picking up, is that not only was it a time for you around 18 when you split away from your parents, but you also kind of split away from your relationship with God at that point?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. And
then the other thing that I wanted to ask too is, okay, you and Shay, you went to school. Going to ministry school is very different than going to music school. Why did you go to ministry school? Why did you both decide to go to ministry school? Because I know, because I've gotten to know you all a little bit, that when you grew up in church, you were very involved in fine arts, those types of things. And then your parents were in music, which is cool for me to hear because I didn't really know that how deep music really went down in
Yeah,
y'all's family.
it's in my
So
bones.
that's so cool. I didn't know that at all.
Yeah.
So knowing all that, that's again so different than ministry.
Yeah.
Why did you go to ministry school?
Okay, well, I haven't ever like shared this I've shared it with, a few people, but this is actually, during my time in Fayetteville. And when this happened, I was 20, 19, almost 20. And my mom and several of my family members were having dreams that I died in a car accident. And we weren't speaking, this was, I was still with my band. And they were just praying for me. They just would pray. And one night it was raining and I was in kind of Bella Vista area coming back to Fayetteville. And at the time they had just made this new exit and I was going to take a shortcut back to my house. So I was getting off this exit. Well, they hadn't had the signs up. It was dark and it was raining. And instead of it going straight, the road going straight to the road, it had a huge curve that went around like this. And it was just almost like a U. And I was coming off the interstate going probably 65. And I went straight. I did not see, there wasn't any signs, no anything. And I just went, and I said the one word that saved me that night. And I just said, Jesus. And instead of cussing, instead of, saying anything else or being like, oh my God, I just said, Jesus. And I look up and my car so here was the whole road. There's a field right here and there's a cattle gate and a driveway right here. I land, I didn't flip, I didn't do anything. I spun a few times, land perfectly, just like this. Upright, normal. Right outside the cattle gate. No damage to my car, no damage to me whatsoever. And I just sat there realizing what had just happened and that I should be dead right now. There's a culvert all the way down on both sides. It was a new road. They had just constructed it. So there wasn't any sort of guardrails or signs or anything. And so I go, I'd always been taught, do not test God and, don't. But at this point, I was like, God, if you exist, if you care about me, and this was your way of waking me up and you give a crap about what I'm doing, I said, I give up. I'm done. You show me, you make everything happen. I'm sick of trying. I'm not going to do it, but you open the door and I'll walk through it. I said, but I'm not quitting my band. They're going to have to quit me. That weekend, my band quit me. And it was because they got into a fight. And then my mom calls me and said, we hadn't been on super good terms. We were fine, but we were, button heads a little bit. She calls me and she says, hey, Shay has an opportunity at Valley Forge Christian College. It's a music school that is up in Pennsylvania. And I have broken my leg and I can't fly. They won't let me fly. Can you take Shay to Pennsylvania? I was like, sure, okay. So we get there and we get to Valley Forge and then we rent a car, which I wasn't old enough to rent a car. My parents had to call. It was a whole thing. And they had this big, huge convention and that Valley Forge was doing the music and production on. It was a big convention with all the different colleges, ministry schools, all this stuff. And, the youth conventions, the huge, Christian. Yeah, for sure. And it was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, which was a couple hours from Philadelphia, which is where we were. We drive in and I walk in and Shay is going off with, the other people and I'm just kind of walking around and I just feel fake, 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 fake. You know, all of y'all have never been through anything real. Just my own biases and my own judgment, honestly, because I had felt so judged that I was like, oh no, you ain't get away from being judged. Like, I'm going to do that to you just like you did to me, which is so, now that I'm matured, thank God. Like, it's stupid, you know, but that was my headspace.
Yeah, it was real.
You know, it was real to me. And so they had all these booths lined up outside the convention. And since I wasn't able to sit in there, I just wanted nothing to do with it. While nobody was out into the hallways, I was like looking around the different booths because I was like, I'm going to make sure this is where Shay wants to go, you know? And I stopped at the only little table that had nobody there because I was like, I'm just going to grab one of these pamphlets. And somebody shows up. And I was like, oh, great. And they were like, oh, are you interested in this? I'll go, oh, no. Like, I'm not interested in college. And they're like, oh, no, this isn't a college. This is a 9-month ministry program. And at that moment, you know how people are like, you know, God spoke to me. And you're like, yeah, you know, it's a feeling. No, God verbally, I heard him in my head, said, you're going to go here. And I was like, oh, dear God. I was like, there's LA, there's Florida, like there's all these other places that were in nice areas. This is Pittsburgh, like cold weather, you know, all this different stuff. And I'm just like, and it's just still a small voice said, you said if I opened the door that you'd walk through it. And so like, this is me like coming back to, you know, God and trying to figure it all out. And so I get out to the car and I call my parents and I said, this is when we were trying to like work through a relationship and stuff. I said, y'all, I don't know what's happened, but I have to go to this 9-month ministry program. So as me and Shay are going around to, you know, different things, Shay was like, this is really weird, but I feel like I'm supposed to go with you. And so he turned down his full ride scholarship to Valley Forge, and we both went to Pittsburgh to this 9-month ministry program.
Wow.
And it was transformative in more than one way because I didn't graduate. I literally did, like, I was struggling so hard internally that I could barely get myself to like commit to it.
You're talking about when you were at school in Fayetteville, you didn't graduate?
When I was at the ministry program, I didn't graduate.
Okay.
Like, this was God's way of being like, I'm going to show you me. I'm going to show you who I am. And that's where we met the Mission SOS people. And it was just like, God was showing me that he wasn't just legalistic. He wasn't just, follow this straight path and, you know, this is the way to get to heaven. It was, I am grace. I am love. And because I love you, I correct you. Because I love you, I tell you these things are wrong and I don't allow you to do these things. It's not because I want to hold you back or make you be, you know, straight-laced, you know, stick in the mud. It's because I care about your well-being and your soul. So that whole experience, honestly, like went full circle of like knowing who God was, but then not really seeing the people back it up with love and realizing that God only corrects those he loves. And, you know, parents only correct those things. You're not going to correct just somebody else's kid. You know, you're not going to be like, don't take that chocolate bar, you're going to spanking, you know, like that ain't your kid. But God corrects us because he does love us. And we don't have to sit in this like mulling over our past sins and stuff. That's Satan. What God wants us to do is see the things that we did that were wrong and to change course, not to be like wallowing in that, you know, self-pity So that's crazy that, I finally told that story, but I don't tell that a lot because it was a life-changing thing for me. And we kind of just like skirt past that into,
who you are today.
Right.
Yeah.
But that was the biggest part of my whole journey right there.
Feel like there's so much to unpack here.
3 hours later.
I know. Let's start. Okay, let's go here. So you're someone who, from my perspective, you can correct me if I'm wrong. I'm just trying to get a feel on who you are, who you were. You are someone who I would say really connected with the darker side of your emotions, younger, growing up, all the way until your 20s, it sounds like. Mm-hmm. And then you went through this deconstruction period. But what's crazy is you still were, to my understanding, you still were, like if you had died, before that argument with your parents, it sounds like you believe that you still would have been going to heaven. So you still were saved, like you were a Christian, but you still were able to connect with your darker side of your emotions,
right,
more so than maybe your light, and express those through your music and your art. Now that you know a lot more about who Jesus is. You went through this deconstruction period. You found who he was for yourself, not because your parents told you to find him.
Right.
How do you connect with that side of yourself now? And how do you go on living knowing that you have the option to, express those emotions like you did before or choose the lighter side? Because knowing you now, like you're a very light, happy person.
Yeah.
I've only seen you twice. I've only known you twice, but I've never seen you not smiling. Never seen you complaining. I can see how you I can still see that person with the music that you like in the music that you create be created. Mm-hmm. How do you do that now? How do you still connect in a healthy way? Because all of our emotions need to be felt.
Right.
And all of them need to be expressed. But you found a different way to do it now that you're different.
Right.
How is that?
I think I've always had a very deep understanding of my emotions. And, this is actually something that I was talking to somebody about the other day. And I've always, even when I was young, always made a choice. Happiness and joy and the frequencies that you vibe in, and I'm a very big frequency person now because even the Bible says, people are saying, oh, it's legalistic. Do not mix wool and linen. And the reason that is the frequency cancels each other out and it actually can create cancer cells. Mm. And now that we know more about frequency and, the studies are showing, the LTE towers, all this stuff, God is a frequency. And that's the reason absence of God is so depressing, because depression is a frequency. Mm. And so when I was younger and started my songwriting journey, that was how I get my emotions out, because I never wanted to put off any sort of depression on other people. I believe that the energy you give off it affects other people, especially people that are susceptible to those specific types of frequencies. And so when you walk into a room and somebody's super negative, mm-hmm. how it just like sucks the energy out of you.
Yes.
Like it is, it's a thing. It's a total thing. And I know I sound real woo-woo because I am. But I've always grown up knowing that if you have positive thoughts, even when I was young, love people more than things. Don't take everything so seriously. But when I would get dark, it was when I would write music and express those dark feelings and emotions, because I was not comfortable sharing those with anyone else. Mm. And not because I was, I am super private, but like I never wanted to make other people feel the way that I did. Mm. So when I would express my feelings, it would be on paper, so it wouldn't affect them. Because I was just I didn't want to be the Debbie Downer in this situation. So listening to that kind of music, it was always just based on how I felt.
Yes. Okay. But now you make music that is light, Man, I think so. Like, I'm thinking one of your songs. I'm trying to think of how it goes. Lay here with me. What's that?
Oh, come on in.
Okay.
Yes.
Very cheerful, joy. Like I know Mr. Rick. And so when I listen to that song and I know, and I have a picture of your husband, who he is, and I know your family, I know what they look like. I am literally listening to that song and picturing a happy family. Mm-hmm. And in my head, it's almost like you're sitting around a dinner table having dinner together on a sunny afternoon on a Sunday. Like, that's the feel, that's the vibe that I get from that. That's the frequency that I get from that music. How do you go from writing dark Billie Eilish type music to now you're writing these, joyful music? And not all of it, it's like some of it's like different and it makes you feel a different way. But this is one big piece that you do. How do you make that music now, but you still have the feelings and emotions that you had before? Because your emotions don't go away.
Right.
You just choose to emphasize which ones you want to express more, especially in your music. How are you expressing that now more in your music and not choosing to express the dark side of your emotions?
Right. I think it was a lot of healing within myself.
Okay.
I think that a lot of the music I write now is all of it is a reflection of who I've become. And allowing God to change your heart and allowing him to change your everything about your life, not being in fear of change. That's been my whole thing, my whole entire life. I hated change. Change is like the bane of I could move and be like, this is a problem. Like, I could be in the same spot forever. Yeah. And it could be a crappy spot, but it's not changing. Mm-hmm. And I had to kind of learn that, get out of past relationships that weren't good for me. And the reason I'm in the place that I am right now is because of three things. One, my family. Them and me, we have become so close. My sister Erica is my best friend in the world. I have the best sister-in-law ever, Hannah. And Shay is just the best brother that gives the best advice. My mom and dad, we've all spiritually connected in a way that most families don't get to. Mm-hmm. And then they keep me accountable. And then two, my husband.
Yes.
Who is just like the sweetest thing. How cool is his name, Kraylin?
Yeah. Don't you have you either have a song about him coming out or...
I've written so many songs about him. I'm sick of it.
The recent one that I'm thinking of,
tattoos.
Is that already, that one's already out, right?
Yes.
Okay.
That one's already out. I wrote that one before we got married.
Okay. Yes. Okay.
So, all of my songs are about him. It's ridiculous. It's James Dean swagger, all the things. He's like, I'm like, I wrote another song, but he's like, cool. I'm like, dadgummit. I should have really fed that to you a little bit slower so you're more impressed.
Yeah, let it simmer. That's so funny.
But the third thing is being connected with God and more than a way of just saying you're a Christian, getting in the Word, being out in nature and being outside is a very big part of being able to see God's creation. We're so connected to our phones and our TVs and all, the things of the world, distractions.
Yes.
And if we get out and just look at a freaking leaf, man, be like, wow. Once you start being more appreciative of stupid little bitty things that you would think are dumb, I thank God for a parking spot.
Yeah, for sure.
Like, I get in front of Walmart, I'm like, Jesus.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for this parking spot. You have to appreciate the little things. And that's the reason my music has changed so much, is because I myself have changed.
Oh, okay.
Yes. Those darker things are not on the forefront of my mind.
Yeah.
And I don't feed that.
Yeah. You're a person who I feel like you're deep. Like, you have a lot of depth to you. And I just don't like and connect to people who are shallow.
Yes.
One of the reasons why I lived in Dallas and we moved back here. No offense if anyone's listening to this, and if they are,
much offense.
Yeah, they could be one of the people. And that's okay. But I just felt like people were so shallow.
Yes.
So shallow. I believe that they were Christians. They would go to heaven. I believe that, they they work their 9-to-5 jobs. They, the worst thing, I sound like I'm being mean. I'm trying not to be mean, but like one of the worst things that ever happened to them is their grandma died,
Right.
like that type of person. Not that bad things have to happen to you to have
Right.
death. That's not what I'm saying.
Exactly.
But like, I just don't connect to them
Right.
at all. And so I feel like you're a deep person. What I want to know though, is I feel like a lot of that depth came from those 2 years when you were disconnected from God, when you were disconnected from your family. Do you regret that time? Because it's hard for me to imagine you being the person you are today if you didn't go through that. But that being said, you love your family so much now.
Yeah.
You love your husband so much. You love what you do so much now that, that time was 2 years away from this lifestyle that you have now, possibly.
Yeah.
Do you regret it, or how do you feel about that, thinking about it in that way?
Not even a little bit, because I feel like I didn't just grow from that. My entire family grew from it.
Okay.
Because it was a complete mental shift of like, we haven't ever had a black sheep like this. That's just like challenging everyone in the family to, reevaluate their relationship with me, for one, but with the whole family. And I think it made my parents were loyal to a fault to me. They were like, people would try to talk about it. My sister, she wouldn't have none of it. Or I could go fight somebody in a Walmart parking lot, you best believe. And, I think it brought us all closer in a way. I don't think that we would be where we are today if it wasn't for God. And he doesn't cause things to happen. He took that situation and made it for his good.
Yeah, for sure.
That was the difference.
Yeah, and it's a part of their journey too now.
Right.
I haven't heard all of this from them yet.
Right.
When Erica did the podcast with your dad, I got to hear his journey and where he was. And it's so cool for me sitting on the outside looking in, and now really being a part of helping your family tell their story.
Right.
I got to see your dad and what he was going through, whenever that was completely separate from his family when all that was happening.
And when I saw that podcast, it was so good.
It's so cool
good.
now to see every little piece of where everyone was. It's almost like I'm watching like Keeping Up with the Kardashians.
I'm Kim. Erica will argue. No, I'm kidding.
That's so funny. But one of the questions I want to ask you, because we were talking about frequencies, also, I don't think you're woo-woo for that. I think that the people who are woo-woo are the people who, who say all that stuff and then they give credit to, and I'm sorry because I know you people are listening, the universe.
Right.
Like those are the people who I call, okay, you're woo-woo.
Right.
I think because I think there is a balance between spirituality and science. Like, there's so much of what God does, has done, is doing that you can actually verify with science.
Yeah.
So a lot of it is. So what you call frequency, I would just call like a vibe. Like, oh, they're giving off bad vibes. Oh, they're giving off good vibes. I hope my life is a vibe. I say that those are the types of things that, I say with frequency. With that being said, one of the questions I want to ask you is when I think about connecting to God on a very deep level, there are two things that get me there really quickly. For me, one of them is music. Mm-hmm. And then the second one is just nature. Like when I go out in nature or I'm listening to music, depending on the music, obviously, I really am able to connect with God on a level that without those two, yes, I can get there, but I can just get there so much quicker if one of these two things are present in a room with me. So I found music so influential to my body and my mind. Music can literally change my day from being bad to being good, depending on the song I'm listening to. On a deep level, what does music actually mean to you now?
For me, it's always been my comfort. So I never speak about this because I'm not the type of person, like I am a huge believer that you are not a victim. You're not a victim. You are an overcomer. And when you start putting yourself in the victim mentality of like, where was me? Like, it's just,
for sure.
It's a lot.
Yes.
I got Crohn's disease when I was 12. And it was one of those things where I just hid it from everybody and, almost died. It was a whole thing. And so getting diagnosed with that, I even had a doctor tell me that, hey, if we don't get this under control, you're going to have colon cancer by the time you're 21.
Wow.
And so it was very severe. And I would go down. This happened in 6th grade. I was 58 pounds. When I was diagnosed, I was like 7th or 8th grade. And so 58 pounds for that age was just ridiculous. And so I went through a lot with that, but hid it from everybody. And so music was my way of being an outlet because I never wanted other people to feel how I felt.
Yes.
I didn't want to bring that in. You'll see Facebook posts today was a really bad day. And you're just man, you're just putting it out there, ain't you?
Yeah.
That's never been me. I would rather suffer quietly than have somebody else have their mood taken down because of my issues. I'm you have your own stuff to deal with.
Yes.
And so music has always been a way for me to express myself or with happiness, sadness, anything in a way that was just mine.
Yes.
It just belonged to me.
Yes.
And so sharing that and, putting it out to the world is a very vulnerable thing. And so that's the reason the music I write now is just I want people to feel happy. I want them to feel connected. I want them to feel like they could turn on my music and it's a safe place.
Yes.
That's kind of where I come from.
Yeah, 100%. Okay, so I want you to imagine with me for just a second here. Imagine that in your mind, your mind is a world, and I have a chance to go on that world for just a moment as you're creating music. You're in the music making process. Let's say you're writing. If I'm in your world at that moment, what might I see that's interesting that I may want to say, what is that about?
Yeah. Well, number one, ADHD. You'll be focus. Stop thinking about the melody and the lyrics and the music at the same time and your background vocals. We're focused on the verse right now.
Yeah.
But for me, I see things in visuals. Mm-hmm. When I wrote James Dean, I can taste secondhand winter fresh. When I wrote that line, it was what's another way of saying, I'm kissing my man. Mm. And that was what came to my brain. And so when I'm writing, everything is a visual.
Yes.
It's a manifestation of what you would actually be going through. I'm not just trying to think of cool words. Mm-hmm. I'm in the moment of what would that feel like? What would that look like? What would that, even taste like,
Yeah.
And so, or colors or scenes. For that specific scene of me writing this song, I imagine I was on Route 66 at a motel and the bathroom was yellow and you've got the double queen beds and they're kind of flowery, weird blankets that you don't want to sit on.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
For sure.
And it's one of the few places that still lets people smoke in there,
Yes.
just that kind of thing. So visually, I'm very, or lyrically, I'm very visual.
Yes. Yeah. So when you said that, it made me think back because you said, one of the things you said before is you actually always have felt safe when it comes to music. Music has always felt safe for you.
World.
So you feel like you can express yourself freely without judgment in music. And that's what you said you always have felt. But what I'm curious about is how's that changed since you become a signed artist? Because not only now and I don't know if this is true or not, but I imagine you go from you're creating music in your room or you're creating music by yourself to now you have a couple of people in a studio, a polished area. How do you still feel safe creating music in that environment now? Because I know right now you're working on a new album or new singles. You can kind of clarify that. But when you go into those spaces, you have to feel vulnerable with lyrics about you expressing yourself about how you feel kissing your man. That's still vulnerable, mm-hmm. But now you have people who are now listening to you create. How do you feel safe?
I think, the first thing that you have to know when it comes to songwriting is your co-writers have to be your friends. You have to feel safe with your co-writers. You have to build a connection. And I don't just write randomly. Like, I don't just book writes. Of course, my manager will book me writes. And, it'll be the first time I write with those people. The first write is never vulnerable. The first write, I might bring some vulnerable content in. I've already written, certain things or whatever. But they don't know how I'm feeling towards that or whatever. To them, it's just words. But building a connection, I have a friend named Lucas. He produced the last 3 singles for me. And we wrote all the time because I felt safe with him. Him and his wife are good personal friends of ours. But when you're writing with people, you have to feel safe. You have to feel like you can be vulnerable with them. And so a lot of times you're going to write with the same people.
Yes.
It's not going to be somebody who's just like random, because you're not going to get great music from that. You want to be able to be vulnerable and honest.
Oh my gosh, I have so many questions still left over. This is definitely one of my favorite conversations so far. Okay, so we're already coming up on and close to an hour in, about 50 minutes. So we're going to have to break this up into 2 because I'm only on question 2 right now.
Perfect.
So
I'm sorry I'm long-winded.
No. It's so good. I just keep asking questions that aren't even I've written down. So let's do this. Can you share about the upcoming releases that you have coming, what you're working on now, how people can find you? And then what we're going to do is, guys, we're going to have a part 2. Because there's still so much more that we can dive into. So we'll stop and we'll pick up at some point for part 2.
Perfect. Sounds great. So you can find me on all social media platforms. I don't post fun content.
You're not like Erica.
Try. Erica's the coolest Instagram.
Yeah, and TikTok.
And TikTok.
Yeah.
I need to get on that level. I just have chickens and I'm just out there with my chickens all the time. I'm so weird. But you can find me at Gabrielle Mooney Music, at Gabrielle Mooney Music on all platforms, or GabrielleMooney.com. I have all my stuff on there.
Awesome. Well, thank you again. Again, we will come back for part 2. Hope you guys are enjoying this conversation as much as I am. At least I know if they're not, your family will. Like, I can see.
We have 4 views.
4 views. All right. See you guys in the next one.